You know
So,
what?
Byron, have you done what we're talking about? Have you been able to look into your life in your 20-something years that you've been on the planet and be able to see, can you give me a real-world example of how the purpose in your own pain and your past and what that has been on your call path?
Yes. You know, I was abused sexually when I was a kid by a cousin, and it's looking back on it. My cousin was only like 4 or 5 years older than me at the time, so we were all still youth. And looking back at that, you know, it was traumatic. But being able to process that over the years, I have been able to personally help those who have gone through that. And while I was able to process it probably a little quicker than some, I've been able, because of my experience, to help them deal with that. And because my cousin didn't get any real form of punishment, I'm able to talk to those who never felt avenged, and so, or vindicated. And so I'm able to help because my past has perfected me, but it's also prepared me. Because and I'm glad you led into that, because it really is my point too, processing what did not happen. Because the reality is, you know, it's not just about what did happen, it's also what did not happen. If you ever have to file bankruptcy, it's not just that you had to file bankruptcy, it's that there was nothing that stepped in to stop the bankruptcy from happening. Right. If you ever had to file divorce or break up with somebody, it's not that you broke up, it's not that you got the divorce as much. Sometimes you can process that. It's that no force came in between the decision and the action.
Stop it.
So you're now having to process the reality that it happened, but also what did not happen. And there are people who struggle more with the fact that someone didn't step in. No one saw their pain. No one heard their cry. No one saw their tears. That the fact that did not happen ends up being more of a struggle for us, honestly, than what actually did happen. So we end up having to do double work to process it, and this is why I tell this story. It's a Bible story, but it's funny because the story of Lot, and Lot was told to leave the city, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and when the angels told him, don't look back. Told the family, don't look back, because if you look back, you know, something's going to happen. Just don't look back. And so the wife of Lot looked back, and she turned into a pillar of salt, right? So we end up taking that, and we end up living our whole lives scared to look back, because we feel like looking back, something bad's going to happen. But I want to say this, that it's not to look back that was the issue, because really in Lot's heart, Lot didn't want to leave the city. So for him to look back, he would have wanted to go back. See, it's different to look back when you don't want to go back than to look back when you want to go back.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So Byron, let me give Byron some silence, if I can ask that of my co-host and myself, for the next couple of minutes to sort of bring your points to a takeaway conclusion for our listeners today.
Definitely. We spoke of the purpose of your past. We spoke about the perfecting part of your past, the part of your past that helps to prepare you, the thing that did happen. It helps to prepare you for your future. We also spoke about the preparation of your past, how your past prepares you, or as it perfects you, it also prepares you to be able to move more into the thing that you're called to, and that is what did not happen. Sometimes what did not happen is preparing you more than what actually did happen. And then the final part that we want to just kind of talk on as I close here is the praise. The praise. Praise. Appreciating what could have happened. We spoke about abuse, and if you're ever in an abusive relationship, you don't just get upset about the violence. Be grateful that you survived. The reality is that there are cemeteries with bodies of people who did not make it out of the same abuse you survived. So appreciate your life. You're struggling financially.
And
don't
Byron,
just focus on what you don't have. There are people who have committed suicide because they couldn't handle the lack. Appreciate what you. If you have nothing in your hand, you still have a strong heart.
Yeah, and let me say this, Byron. Let me say this, and I apologize for interrupting you. The number one abusive relationship, because there are people who heard what you just said and think, well, I'm not in an abusive relationship, and I never have been. What I want to share with people is that the number one abusive relationship that most people are in is with themselves. When you don't think good thoughts about yourself, when you don't love yourself, you are in an abusive relationship with yourself. And that has to be corrected in your life. When you're making choices that don't reflect self-love, you are in an abusive relationship with you. Go ahead, Byron.
Yeah, I'll give you the definition of abuse. Abuse is trying to fit something where it doesn't belong. And
Come on.
I have seen, it does not mean it has to be physically, but you look at this. Abuse is taking a square peg and trying to put it in a circular hole. That is abuse because you're trying to fit it where it doesn't belong. And that's what we do with ourselves. We try to put ourselves in situations we don't belong.
Exactly.
We try to put ourselves in relationships we don't belong. We try to engage in things that aren't a part of our future or our destiny. That is abuse. So yes, Robert, you're right. Abuse can happen in many different forms. You can do it to yourself. And in that moment, when you realize you've been doing it, you need to be able to just stop everything, as we've been able to do a few times here, and soak it in and just praise God. Or praise the fact that you made it here. Yes. Here may not be where you want to be, but you made it. And making it sometimes to just a place where you're still alive, where you still got a roof over your head, where you still can eat and you're not going completely hungry, where you may not eat what you want to eat, but you can eat something. The fact that you have made it here deserves at least a modicum of praise, that you can appreciate life for what it is. It may not be what you imagine, but at least it's what you have. And some people don't have it. So the fact that you have it, you ought to appreciate the fact that you're holding on to something that others had to let go of.
Let me take a phone call. Byron Jamal.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm good, man. I know that number. Are you listening? You got a comment for me today?
Oh, my goodness. What a conversation that's always been had.
I know you want a piece of this conversation.
Oh, this dialogue is right up
my
alley. I love it. For me, I absolutely agree that people will use unhealthy means to validate how they feel about themselves. And in essence, we live out how we think about ourselves. And so
come on now.
If I think of myself as somebody who God doesn't love, who people will have a hard time loving or appreciating or understanding, then I will live that out. And because those thoughts are unhealthy, then my actions will be unhealthy. In fact, from what I've seen of the gay community, there are tons. When I say tons. You can type in just gay, black, anything, and it will come up sex. We have turned to sex. Sex has become the healing balm to give us a momentary feeling and sense of attachment to a community, to make us feel like we are welcome in some way, shape, or form, that we are now in relationship with somebody, if even, like Luther said, for one night. We will take that. We will take the momentary healing and the momentary means and methods to find peace instead of going for the long-term, full-term solutions. And it just becomes easier. It becomes easier to go to the clubs. And in fact, so I'll give this story. It's really recent, actually. One of my friends in Boston, he started the Hispanic Black Gay Coalition. And they don't do any parties. It's all educational. It is anytime they get together, if there's food or music, they are teaching something. They are talking about something that the communities are dealing with, especially HIV/AIDS. One of the people that joined with the organization just so happens to be a part of another organization that all they do is throw parties. So they're throwing a party for Valentine's Day called, excuse my language, but F relationships have sex. So it's basically an opportunity for these young brothers to get together and hook up at this party and then afterwards go have sex. So he was saying, look, brother, you're going to...
But here's what I want to know from you, Byron. Here's what I want to know from you in the limited time, because I only got a minute left. Here's what I want to know.
Sure.
Why do you think it is okay for people to be in a relationship, to have... I just told the story earlier, I don't know if you heard it, about my friend who's been with the same partner for 20 years and is cheating on the partner with a married man with 3 kids. What do you need to tell yourself to make all those levels of deception okay in your life?
I think you don't have to tell yourself anything, honestly. I don't think a lot of people are having honest conversations with themselves, which is why they're able to do it so freely. If you were able to have an honest dialogue with yourself about what you're actually doing to people who are honestly being affected, then how many people would earnestly be able to continue their actions to the degree that they are? But, you know, it's easier to keep silent about it, as we do in the church, as we do in the community, about various things. And I think that non-silence is what is killing us. That silence is killing us, even the silence that we have with ourselves.
Well, I will say that I was thinking, because this is really good dialogue, and I've lived this especially for the last 3 months, because when I moved to the D.C. area, it was simply on faith. I mean, I transitioned here with a temporary job that was only 3 weeks, and
That's faith,
I moved here.
That's faith.
That was only 3 weeks, and it was because of that transition that I was able to, out of that, after the first week, they decided to hire me full time as a permanent employee. And had I not made that real faith decision, I would not know all the things that were available to me now. And what I'm learning in life is that the only way to get bigger vision, and what you're saying, Robert, is so true, to ask for bigger things. We don't know to ask for things that we really have never seen or we've never been introduced to. And so sometimes God has to say, go over this way, move now, and then when you get there, you're like, I don't know what's here or why I'm here, but as you begin to look around and investigate your area, your new territory, you start to see things in a different way, things you had never seen before, possibilities that are now afforded to you and available to you simply because you made a transition. It's not easy. It doesn't always seem fair that you have to go and pick up and move and just do it. But at the end of the day, I always believe, and I always go back to the story about Abram, being able to sacrifice your son, Isaac, being able to sacrifice your son, there is still always a ram in the bush. You may go to a place where you have no idea how this thing is going to turn out, but there is a ram in the bush. There's always a ram in the bush. I can attest to the ram. And so I really want to encourage somebody, especially you, even today, Robert, because the ram is there. If you go, you'll see a ram, but you will never know a ram is there until you go.
Right.
That's right.
This week, Robert, we had a conversation about relationships and just a lot of it friendships. For me, I've been somewhat of a loner for a lot of my life. I had to recognize, especially in this season, that when people have to back up or back away, when you're transitioning in relationships and people have to take a step back, whether consciously or subconsciously, this is one thing I'm recognizing. In order to see the entire mountain, you have to back away from it. Your destiny might just be that great that people have to step away from you to really see you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can be so close on something that you can't really see what it really is. And I could say that about destiny, too. Sometimes you're so on it. You're so focused on the big thing, and you're just all on that you can't step back and see the full picture. That sometimes you're so wanting some particular portion of it that you can't see the big picture. And so it's the stepping back. Sometimes God will allow things to go backwards. He'll allow, just like the plane, before it takes off, it has to back up away from where you loaded on. So, I'm recognizing that sometimes going backwards is actually the thing that's going to propel you. That it's a setup for the launching that's about to happen. You know, the way you see the world is how you see yourself. And so if you don't really take an honest look at yourself and you really can't, as you were talking earlier before I got on, if you really can't have that honest dialogue about who you are and come to that truth, then you can't effectively do the same about the situations in your world either. And so I think it is then a good thing that you're able to dig into who you are and the situations that you're encountering on an honest level, because that means that you're able to look at the situations that you encounter in a very honest and real way. Because the truth is, like you said, we all play a part in everything. Personally, like someone offended me some time ago, and I had to look at, well, why did they do it? And in the conversation, I realized that there was a hurt in them, and I did something that reminded them of something that was done to them many years before that they were holding on to. It triggered something. I didn't even know it. But that was the chain reaction. And sometimes we don't mean to do certain things, but it happens. And so for me, I think it is good if we can take that first step, and as you were talking about earlier, really looking inward at self and being honest, then when situations come, you can see them more clearly.
Byron, give me your final thoughts on what we're talking about this morning.
In what I'm discovering is that this whole path that we live on from day to day really is a journey of discovery, navigation, and achievement. At first, you discover, and this is what I call your call path DNA, your life's DNA. It's always a continual process of discovery, navigation, and achievement. You will always be in a process where you discover something new, whether it be about yourself, something internal or external. Then you will go through the process of navigating that. Whether it's getting an iPhone, you discover the iPhone, you navigate learning how to use it. And if it's your life, you're learning how to best navigate a character flaw, how to overcome it. You're journeying through it. You're taking step-by-step action to navigate through it. And then achievement. You get to a place where you finally feel like you can take that deep breath and say, it's better. That happens in big ways. I feel like we have a overall DNA process for our entire life, one big circle. And I feel like there are smaller circles that are always happening from day to day. We're discovering something, we're navigating, we're achieving along it. Every day is a process. So I feel like for those who are journeying with faith, just believe that the A, after the D and the N, always comes. I want to encourage somebody with that the A does come. You have to go through the D and you have to go through the N. But when you process through that, you will get to the A. If you stay on the path, if you follow the breadcrumbs, the yellow brick road, as we go back to the Wizard of Oz, if you will follow that thing, it only takes you to life. I believe the scripture says that God will show you or lead you along the path of life. David was praying that. He said, God, show me the path of life, for it will fill me with joy in your presence. And I believe that God has something great. God has created a path for us that is so awesome and so great that look, we may not like it, we may not always understand it, but it will always turn out good.
So I'm going to put that on the shelf for right now. Everything I've dropped on you in the first hour, let's put that on the shelf while we turn to my brother, who has not been here for some time. I had a list of the 4 occasions that he's been here before, and I do not have it in front of me, but I have it. I did go through that process this week, but he hasn't been here in some time. I'm very happy to welcome him back today. Brother Byron Jamal, welcome to you.
Well, good to be on the show today. How are you feeling, Robert? I've been listening, man, and you've been doing a great job. How have you been?
I'm well, man. You sound like you're in a vacuum. So I don't know if you have a headset on or you sound far away. You sound far away. You sound like you're... Yeah, you sound like you're in a tunnel and the wind is blowing.
There we go. Is that a little bit better?
That's a little bit better. I'm well, brother. It's been a minute since we've connected in real time. I'm happy to have you here today to talk about manageable challenges. But before we get to that, let's just catch up a little bit so that I know and Michelle knows and our listeners know what you've been up to since the last time you were here. It's been some years. I think it's been probably either 4 or 5 years. I remember you were here right when I first moved down here to the beach, and we were talking about the purpose of your past. And I think that was in 2012. So it may have been 5 years since you've been here.
Wow.
It's been quite a while. It's been quite a while. And the journey has been a beautiful one of lessons learned and opportunities for growth, which I have utilized. I feel like, especially at this stage of my life, going back into corporate life a little bit, jumping into a new business venture and helping people write their books, and really just taking time to find and be comfortable with the fullness of who I am and the truth that I know.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So when we talked the other day, I said, no, we were talking about something else. And I asked you, I think I just asked you how you were doing. And you said, I have manageable challenges. And I was like, ooh, that's meaty right there. That's something that's a bone to gnaw on for a minute. So what exactly did you mean when you said you have manageable challenges?
Well, here's one thing that I've, over the years that we've known each other, I've come to realize that really most of what we have that we call a challenge is really an inner issue. It stems from the origin is in us. For instance, I always use this analogy of the dog with a bone that's walking over a bridge and passing what he's walking over is a small stream. And he stops in the middle and looks into the stream and sees his own reflection, but not knowing that it's his reflection, thinks it's another dog with another bone. And so instead of moving on and being fine with what he possesses already, he snaps at the dog in an attempt to intimidate the dog to give up the bone and loses his own in the stream. Creating a challenge because now all of a sudden he's lost something that was his possession and something that he had held as an item of endearment.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of us have, because of our own inability to be comfortable with what we already have created challenges that should never have been present in our lives?
Mm.
If we look at our relationships, if we look at our finances, for instance, People that cheat have a good relationship, may have a good relationship, doesn't matter if it's good or bad. But the essence of creating a challenge in your life, because of the inability to be confident and comfortable with what you already possess, now has created a new dynamic in your life that wasn't supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really going off of the word challenge, and the reason why I love this word challenge is because of what it really means. It means to call to competition. Now, what is the competition? It's not always with someone else. It's really with yourself. Are you competing with the image of what you want to be versus what you think you already are? Also, the Latin definition is originally a false accusation or to disprove deception. And so how many of us have been deceived? When you look at the original story, if you use the Bible, and many of the original texts or origin stories, there was some creature that deceived the early humans into believing that they were not enough as they were. And this created a challenge. And so when I say in my life now that I have manageable challenges, it's really, really managing me. Because if I can manage me, my own ego, my own pride, my own lust, my own greed, if I can manage that, then really the challenges aren't the challenges that we are accustomed to calling them, because we normally attribute outside forces. They are really me dealing with me.
It always comes down to that, doesn't it? Me dealing with me.
I like that.
That's what it all is, all the time.
Dealing with me.
Exactly.
Yeah. It truly, truly is. It is. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and
How are you, by the way? I said, lay it down.
It's good to hear your voice.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yours too. It is challenges.
It is so good. Yes, right?
So, manageable challenges, when I think of, you know how the elders would say, you know, God don't give you more than you can bear. Y'all heard that before? So, it speaks to that for me, that whatever is on the plate at any given time, even if I can't put it together in my own mind space or spirit space or heart space, it is manageable or it wouldn't be here.
Correct.
You know, I wouldn't be receiving this or experiencing this if I didn't have the capacity to in some way get through it, to continue continue to think my way and create my way through it.
You know, a lot of people look at, other people and they say they have a lot of baggage and things that they've been through, they're going through. They attribute a negative connotation towards baggage because that baggage looks messy. And I always say that if you're going anywhere of note, anywhere of that's pertinent, that's different than where you are now, it requires some luggage because you're going to go for a while, and it's not what you have on isn't enough to handle where you're going. So you need some luggage. Now, we also call that baggage. The difference is that taking that baggage with you actually is the power and is the thing that helps to suit you for where you're going. Baggage actually is your power. And that's one of the things that I love about being conscious spiritually, is because you understand. Robert, you made mention of God won't put more on you than you can bear. And it's one of those things where it also is true that God knows the ending from the beginning. And if that's true, that everything you've already thought of doing, already done, God knew it. And so he crafted you backwards. He crafted you from the end back to the beginning, and he already knew what you were going to step in and how you were going to be able to get through it. And I'm thankful for that, because even when Adam and Eve sinned, there was grace. Even when Cain killed Abel, he still had a mark on him that did not allow others to take him out. Even when other people, Job was going through his situation, there was a silver lining at a point where he could not be broken. And that is the beautiful thing about how this world that we live in and how we connect from flesh to spirit allows us to keep moving through challenges. And that's why I say most of it is not the external, it is the internal. Because just like with Adam and Eve, I think many years ago I said this to you, Robert, about the call path, was that this world was created first for us. Everything, if you look at it in Genesis, everything was crafted and we were put to manage it. Mm-hmm. And so that meant we were created for the specific intent of whatever was to happen in our environment. We were made to be able to manage it and made to be able to handle what happened in it, and to have the creativity and the drive and the determination to know how to keep pushing forward and succeed. So the beautiful thing is that we, in our own lives, even in this non-biblical time of the Old Testament, we still have that same creativity, that same grace, and that same power in us to see something and name it and say, instead of defeat, that is victory. Instead of what's going to death, that is my prosperity. And we're able to name it and then find a way to manage it to come back to a positive outcome.
My question to you, Brother Byron, is when you encounter a challenge, because I want to get a little scientific and begin to break some of these ideas down. When you encounter any challenge, just any one you can think of that you're open to sharing with us right now, what is your thinking process at the onset of the challenge? Once you realize, oh, this is a real thing in my life that needs to be dealt with, then what?
So, great question. And there are three things that I think of initially, and I have to ask myself. Number one, what was the originator? So where did this come from? Mm-hmm. Was it an original thought from something outside or inside? So was it a serpent or was it just really me? Mm-hmm. And then two, I have to ask, who is impacted by this challenge? So before I'm going to figure out how to solve this thing, I got to figure out how many people or how many possessions or how many anything else is impacted or influenced by the challenge in my life. And then lastly, who's the solution? What is or who is the solution? Because is it something that I need someone else to do, or is it something that really is just me, and I can solve this if I do X, Y, or Z? By asking those three questions, I really approach every situation. So, for instance, met with a financial advisor. It was like, one of the things you should do is probably get rid of this car and look at that car. Mm-hmm. And I had a moment where I had an Adam and Eve moment, where I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And I'm like, okay, this is the tree you said I should have, mm-hmm. And this is the tree I want. Okay. So it's that moment where you realize, okay, I'm the originator of this because I got something that I could afford but wasn't the best for me for what I said I wanted down the road. Mm. So now I'm fighting with the fact that because I see this other tree and other people have already partaken of that tree and we already have conversations because of that tree. As you said, it leads back sexually. When you talk about sexuality and things that are sexual, you almost use the word energy because it is transferred. And so what happens then is when you meet people, when you're in a certain clique of people who have something that you have already partaken of, that energy is going back and forth, keeping you right where you are. And so to disconnect from that energy to go back to something that seems less than because it's the one for you. And that's where we have issue. Is this the one when we don't realize that the thing for us is better than the thing we want? The thing that God said, that's yours, go after it, and yet we see something else that is more something more attractive to us, like David with Bathsheba. And so I would rather have that than wait for what I need. And now I am opening doors to other challenges. And so for me, that's why I realize it is best to look at, did I create this challenge? Who is impacted by it? Because if we use the David and Bathsheba situation, now my thought patterns and my internal challenge is now about to affect some other people. About to get a man killed. I'm about to, affect a woman's life. I'm about to put a stain on my spiritual journey and on my kingdom.
Okay, now let's pause there.
How many things are impacted?
Because we're going to bite the elephant. And I don't like that. Bite the elephant. Well, I don't want to harm one of God's creatures. We're going to take this. I don't like that at all. See how easy it is. The poor elephant. Why am I injuring a poor element? You know what I mean? Elephant. Let's take it piece by piece, because just in the example that you used, David and Bathsheba, the root of that whole story was his sexual desire, was lust.
It was.
That's back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I'm just throwing that out there. But to back up, I like your 3 questions. I think number 1 is the most impactful. What was the originator of this challenge? We're talking about manageable challenges. What was the originator? What is the origin of this challenge? Brother Byron, how are you doing on time? How much time do you have left with us today?
I have time, brother.
Okay. All right. I just want to,
yes.
I love to hear that. We're going to probably go a little bit over. I want to invite our listeners, if you're listening on your computer or in the chat room on your computer, in about 11 minutes, that's going to go radio silent on you. So if you want to continue with us, you can switch over to the phone lines, 323 1546, 323 1546. Brother Byron, anything you want to say about manageable challenges that you haven't already spoken on?
I want to add to Michelle's thought today, because it was beautifully stated about pain, especially. That pain is much about acknowledgement. The body's way often of letting us know of things that need to be tweaked, altered, fixed, is through pain. And if we can, you can't manage anything that you don't know is there. And so sometimes we do have challenges in our life that we don't even acknowledge as challenges, because we haven't taken the time to assess our lives. We're just going and doing. And so pain comes in sometimes, and it helps us realize that, oh, wait a minute, I'm not, this unexpected bill pops in, and you realize, oh, I'm not as secure in my reserve funds as I thought I was. And so you're financially now on guard to face that challenge in the future. We need some pain. And where I'm coming at now with manageable challenges is really that first word more than the second. It's acknowledging that we must manage them. It's not ignoring our challenges. It's not sweeping them under the rug. It's not hiding them. It's not trying to make yourself look better than the fact that you might have a challenge. It is simply owning the fact that you have a challenge, and that you are actively, just like every other person in the world in one way, shape, or another, managing it. Now, not everybody's managing it well, but the fact that you are attempting to manage it and to come through it, that is the point of that. Now, Michelle, you made a great point about, coming out of situations, things where you're in depression, and some people are thinking of suicide. These are moments. These are moments when you are susceptible to the death of your challenge. That you are susceptible to the death component of your challenge. Every challenge has that, where you just want to give up, where you just want to hide under the covers and not come out of the house and things of that nature. But being able to take ownership, acknowledge, take ownership, and then create the plan for your own life and for that situation. Always, and I stress this word, and I don't use these types of grand words often that cover everything, but always bring you back out and bring you back into a place where you're supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, I do want to step in and say a few things about pain, because I'm listening very closely to what Byron is saying. I listen very closely to what Michelle said, and I think there are some noteworthy distinctions. Some pain, I think you're absolutely right. All pain, Brother Byron, shows up to bring us information and to call us into a deeper introspective state about what exactly the hell is going on in our lives and in ourselves. All pain does that. And yet a paper cut is different from a stove burn, is different from a broken leg, is different from the death of your mother. These are different levels and layers of pain. That paper cut is not going to break you. The death of your mother can break you. And then Michelle spoke to this. It can send you so far out of reality as you know it that on some psychic level you choose not to come back. That's what that kind of pain can do for you. And so there are different remedies for different kinds of pain. There's some commonalities. They all call you into a deeper level of introspection. Greetings to my beloved brother, Byron Jamal. Welcome to you. I'm so glad you're here today.
I am too. Thank you so much for having me, man. I am glad to hear your voice and glad to be able to share it today with you. You know how these moments are amazing every time we get together.
The last time you were here, October 14th, that was just a few months ago, and you were talking about manageable challenges. How's your spirit this morning?
Oh, it's so clear. It's vivid, and it's in a place now where I believe that you really get every color that's in the crayon box. Or you have access to every color that is out there, and God gives you a box that you can pick up the crayons that you choose. And right now, my spirit, I'm thinking back to when I was in grade school, and there would just be a box of crayons or markers, and you could just dig your hand in the box, and the teacher would say, here's a box for this table, here's a box for that table, and whoever wants to use it, there'd be that one kid that just picks up one blue, and everything is blue on the paper, and then there'd be the ones that grab a handful of different colors.
Right.
Just feel like I'm in a space where my life has more access to the colors that God has provided for us.
More access to the colors. That's a good phrase. When you close your eyes and tap into the Holy Spirit right now, what one word comes to your heart in this moment? Timing. So let's start right there with the word timing. Tell me more about what that means to you in this moment.
When I understand the journey that God allows us to walk, and looking back at my own, I've realized that everything was centered around timing. Even though the Spirit operates outside of time, it still has power within time. And I've come to realize that each day as I walk, every moment has significance in its own way, whether it's in resting, or it's in learning, or it's in spending time with others. Each moment has put something in my heart, in my life, has empowered me, has directed me, has guided me, and has caused me to wait at some moments. Everything was in its time. And whenever I stepped out of the timing or tried to push too hard, there was injury. Injury to a relationship, injury to my body, injury to the way that my life, even my bank account, the way that my life was purposed to be. And so now my prayer is, God, I don't mind if I have to wait, just don't let me force it before I'm ready for it.
Don't let me force it before I'm ready for it. That kind of bleeds into the question I was going to ask you. Do you make a distinction between your ideas of timing and God's idea of timing?
Absolutely. I think there's a few ways you can live, and I think some of them have merit at different times depending on where you are mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You can kind of live free, as one of my good Aquarius friends often say, live free, where you allow your life to be like the kite. That is, you have the force to get up while it's windy in the air and to be taken where you will go, and believe that the wind, the spirit, will guide and protect. There's a blending of that where you are more of the one holding the kite as well as being the kite, and you are all in tune to where you will allow the portion to just go where it goes, but then you still have control in some aspect of some of the steps that happen and where you're going to fly that kite, not where necessarily the kite may go. So you're actively a participant in the process. And I'm in that space right now where I'm actively a participant, but I am fluid enough, I am willing enough to be amicable with how the wind moves my life, and flexible and malleable enough to say, if this is not it, then I will go where you need me to go. And I had a conversation with my mentor recently from my MBA program. And I said to him, I said, look, I've had all these experiences in my life. I've done a range of different things. I worked in a number of different professions, and I have all this stuff, different things, randomly different things on my resume. And he said, I've had that too. So he said, but the question you have to ask yourself is now, what does it mean? What does it all mean? What is it pointing to? What does your heart say? What does your spirit say? Where has it, what is the arrow? What is the arrow constructed of that's been made by all of these experiences? What type of arrow is it? And where is it pointing? And as I began to dig into that, I got more clarity and direction. And that's why I say timing, because sometimes there's that final puzzle piece that you can't have the last piece until you've gotten the piece before the last piece in its place. And I think that's what we miss, is that while we're trying to get to an end point, there are the pieces that you have to put, and no matter how fast you are, you will never get it instantly. It will always, there's no puzzle that comes together pre-made already. And so looking at how the pieces come together, whether I'm using the analogy of the arrow or whether it's talking about this puzzle, it has to form. And that's why I say timing. And that's why I'm pointing to this place in my life where I'm at now, where I am one in holding this kite and yet the kite itself.
A few things you said there. Allow your life to be like the kite. I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful visual. And then you mentioned the question that your mentor brought forward to you, which is one of the questions of life. Really. I've been doing a lot. I've been busy. But what does it all mean? That's another piece. And then you talked about the pieces. And I hear that as many people are always asking God for fresh direction and fresh manna. And I know in my life, in my relationship with the Creator, sometimes I'll hear back from the Holy Spirit, well, wait a minute, beloved son, do the last thing I told you. And then we'll move on to some fresh manna. Do the last thing I told you. How would you describe your childhood? What was growing up like for you?
The childhood was as diverse as my life is now and experiences. I was adopted at an early age, had a mom that was, or have a mom that was adopted as well, had loving grandparents, had a big family, was loved and embraced and accepted. Even though I wasn't blood to any of these people, they all still loved me holistically. I think regardless of how much love you get in that moment, though, there was still a sense of not belonging and feeling like the outsider accepted. And that while I was grateful for the acceptance and how authentic the love felt, it still was outsider, the sense of being an outsider. And because of that, I struggled with sometimes depression. Being an only child, I also dealt with a bit of loneliness and not feeling like I had the opportunities to really embrace fully the opportunity to talk and to just build relationships with people my age. So most of my closer friends became older people, which has its benefits as well. I mean, definitely matured faster. But even on the surface, as I was a moderate student, never really amazing, never stellar, but I was always considered affable, likable, fun, focused. I wrote school plays. I did stuff at church. I was a leader. I was involved in this and that. But that was on the surface. And yet underneath, there were these experiences that happened with sex that were at the time when I really think back to them, remarkable that they were even able to happen. First sexual experience was a young babysitter. I mean, when I say young, I was just 3 or 4 or 5, and she was 12, and she let me touch her under the dining room table. We had a huge dining room table with a long cloth, and she let me touch her. And I remember that so vividly at that age. And then even the next time was when I moved to Charlotte from Massachusetts, and a schoolgirl in elementary school, mind you, she was sitting right next to me. She had a little skirt on, and she took my hand and had me touch her and said, "Hey, I have different parts." So obviously she knew that I had something different. And it progressed on from there. I had these moments sexually where both men and women touched me, whether it was a cousin or a classmate or a kid in the neighborhood. Throughout the course of my life, sexuality had been introduced and kind of forcefully placed in my space. So I was dealing with this church life and this school life that was saying, be this way and do this thing, and yet some of the same people that I was experiencing that life with were a part of the sexual exploration and introduction that I was having, even at an early age. So my childhood was one of conflicting conversations, because on one hand, it was holy, 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 do this or go to hell, and I was watching these same people doing the acts that they were saying that would send me to hell, but were doing them very confidently and very easily without seeming to have any kind of remorse or reservation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my childhood, is one of sexuality, spirituality, and how they really, for many years of my life, conflicted. And I felt as though I was battling the two, and it was almost like two wrestlers in a wrestling ring, and it seemed like one would get the upper hand one moment and the other would get the upper hand the next moment. Finally, it just crazy thing happened, and one got pinned, and it was over. And then it started all over the next day. So that's my childhood experience in a nutshell, is diversity, conflict, and not really ever finding resolution in childhood, just kind of letting the battle happen, the battle royale, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Now, you laid down quite a few pieces there. You said I was adopted at an early age. Was your biological mother also adopted, or was the woman who raised you also adopted?
The one who had raised me.
Okay, so the woman who raised you, your mom who raised you, was also adopted herself. So a beautiful thing to be placed for adoption at some point in your life, and then to grow up and to receive someone else into your heart and into your home for adoption as well. I think that's a beautiful thing. I hear you when you say there's a feeling of not belonging, a sense of being an outsider. This takes me back to 1998 Discovery Channel, and I was doing a show there called Reunion, and it was a daytime show, and we would reunite people just like you're talking about. I can't tell you how many stories we did of people who grew up in beautiful homes, wonderful homes, thrilled about it, loved their parents. And yet when they looked at the family portrait over the fireplace, there was always the question of, where are the people that I look just like? Where are they? Where are they? And so I remember hearing that and feeling, connecting to what that must have felt like to not see anyone who looks like you. Seems like a superficial thing, but it has layers. And so we would help these people find their biological parents, and sometimes there were great successes and sometimes there were not. I have that in my own family. I have an older brother from my father, who is not from my mother, who is from a relationship that my father had before he married my mother. And I didn't know for years that I even had an older brother. And in 2005, we connected for the first time. And it had a happy ending. It does not always have a happy ending. I know a man that I worked with at Discovery Channel who went searching for he is adopted and went searching for his biological mother and found her and reached out to her. And she wrote a note back to him saying, please do not ever contact me again. So it can go either way. It can go either way. So that was one of the pieces that you laid down. And I hear that very clearly. The sense of being an outsider, even in a very loving environment. And then you laid down depression, which is very, very common in a lot of people's lives, my own included. So you're an older man now, so you can look back and use the word depression. Yeah. At the time that I experienced that sort of isolation in my young life, teenage years, I wouldn't have put the word depression on it. I don't even know if I knew what the word depression meant. But what did it mean to you? What did that look like in your life, being depressed or having periods of depression at that point in your life?
At that point, I experienced obesity, overeating, isolation, just kind of eating and reading, and got into comic books, playing with myself a lot with toys and things of that nature, and then finding myself really antisocial. I was in that environment where the kids in the neighborhood were all going through their sexual exploration as well and awakening. And so much of what we did was kind of touching each other and things of that nature. And so I didn't really find friendship. It was more of the sexual kind. And so it just became that. And so finding people that wanted to be around me for me and not for anything else other than spending time with me, my energy, that took me lower. And it took me into a place where even though there were people that celebrated me, like in school, I remember this experience very vividly. And this is where I knew where my psychosis was. I was on a school trip. We went to Disney World. I was with the choir at school. We were singing at Disney World, and it was 4 people to a room, 4 guys in a room, and two beds. And I was sleeping closest to the door. And I'll never forget the guy in my bed. He had tried to touch me in the middle of the night. He was he was like 2 grades older than me, and I dozed off, I guess, in the midst of it. In the middle of the night, I find myself screaming, literally screaming, sleepwalking for the first time in my life, screaming on the edge of the railing of the 2-story motel that we were staying at, where I was exposed to the outdoors. I was literally just screaming. And I remember my choir directors, coming and grabbing me and shaking me and saying, "Byron, are you all right? What's going on?" And it was the next day, after getting back into bed, going back to sleep, not really understanding what happened, that I had another moment right when we went to go eat, and we were about to head back, and I just wandered off and was staring at a pool that was adjacent to, I think it was a McDonald's. It was adjacent to that restaurant. And I was just staring at that pool, and my teacher was trying to find me, and she saw me through the window, and she came and grabbed me. I said, "Byron, what are you about to do?" And I realized how depressed I was. We had gone to Disney World, one of the happiest places in the world. And I'm standing with people who are friends of mine, who are kind to me, who, this choir was a safe space. And yet I was still depressed because there was a part of me that never felt like I fit in, that never felt like I was fully embraced, that never felt like I fully knew who I was, and I was wrestling with myself about myself. Mm-hmm. And there were moments where I realized I wanted to just stop. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And in that moment of looking in that pool, I realized I didn't want to be there anymore. And it was a long ride back on that bus, back into Charlotte, North Carolina. And I sat and just stared out the window, dozed off a few times, and looking back in hindsight, I realized while I never went to a counselor, there was a part of me that had to embrace the loneliness aspect of life and not make it a negative, but see it as a moment to really help yourself to find yourself. Mm. And that's how I defined depression back then. It was that kind of experience that took me out of myself to where my own body and my own energy was lifting me out of the bed, was taking me to an edge, was causing me to scream without my knowledge, dazed me in the midst of a restaurant, and had me walk. Those are the kind of experiences I realized okay, at that age, you had no control. You were too far gone in your pain to even identify it. And so now, looking back, I can actually talk about it, but I had no idea what that meant back then. I had no idea. But I knew I was not well. And I knew I was not happy.
How old were you when you were screaming in the middle of the night on the balcony in the hotel on that church trip?
It was, it had to be between 14 and 15.
Okay. You said I experienced obesity. Do you connect that experience at that time to being a coping mechanism for some of the things you were experiencing, or how do you look at and understand that period of obesity at that time in your life?
That period happened specifically. I can recall it getting bigger and bigger as a point of me drawing in and finding isolation. So I wasn't running in the streets. And in fact, I felt as though what happened more specifically as those sexual encounters, as I mentioned, with the kids in the neighborhood had happened, and I was having my own processing moments in isolation where I said, well, do they like me for me or the things that we're doing? And in that time, I saw obesity as a way of taking away the beauty of my body and now forcing people to reveal whether or not they like me for me. Not for my body, but for me. And so by transforming the body into something, and I believe this all happens subconsciously, but by transforming the body into something that's considered not as appealing, now if you like me, you like me. And it's not for this or it's not for that. You have to just like me. You have to like me for who I am. And those moments of obesity, it's funny because I found friends that were female and some that were male that I feel like doing that subconsciously actually achieved the goal that I was looking for at the time.
So you say taking away the beauty of my body, and I hear that as protecting yourself from these gropers. Would that be accurate?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned a major key, and we'll amplify on this a little bit later, but I just want you to know that I heard it, and it's big. Help yourself to find yourself. Now, that's the key, brothers and sisters. At some point, I mean, we're talking about some very serious details about Brother Byron's journey, and the details may be different for each of us, but at some point, we ain't there yet. We gonna get there before we leave this space today, but we ain't there yet. But I do want to ask the listeners to make a note of what Brother Byron said. At some point, you have to help yourself to find yourself. That is a key, and we'll revisit that key here shortly. So a thread that I'm hearing also with the depression, and you've mentioned it several times, and I certainly can relate to it. And I'm also hearing loneliness. That's a big one. That's a big one for a lot of us. That has been the one thing that I can say has led me down the most self-destructive road that I have traveled on in my 51 years. Loneliness led me down that road.
Yeah.
And there are some dark devils and some dark energies to be found on that road if you're not careful. So let's talk about loneliness. What did that, you did mention the isolation, the sort of antisocial behavior, but can you paint a picture of what it looked like to be the lonely Byron in his young years, 14, 15? What did that look like for you, being lonely?
It was me spending a lot of time in my room.
Right.
It was me not having, listening to the kids talk about what they did with the other kids over the weekend. It was me overhearing that on Monday and knowing I had done none of that with anyone. It was me driving myself deeper into church activities because, from the youth choir to youth ministry, driving myself into church work and finding myself sitting at church and wanting to be there because it was a place where I considered people had to love you and had to be around you and praying for sincerity and authentic relationships with people. It drove me deeper into church. And the hope of fulfillment of what church presented. It was me diving deeper into creativity because my mind was so unoccupied with things that now I had to create an alternative space. So at 14, 15, I'm writing scripts for comic books. I'm writing a book. I'll never forget, I wrote a first book called The Altar Boy versus the Altar Boy. The ALTER versus the ALTAR. It was my way of writing this duality and explaining it in my own way of what I was feeling about not being fully immersed in either world of spirit or natural life. It was my way, but that creativity expanded, and I became more free in my own typing and my own writing. And that's how I discovered my writing, was in that isolation. It's how I discovered characters. I wrote a few comics and had one of the guys that I was close to, I went to church with, who drew. He was able to draw pictures to the writers. We formed a friendship because of it. To this day, actually, I reach out to him. He's a good guy, Ronald. And that was my loneliness. It was isolation. It was discovery of a gift. It was talking with myself and through myself and finding ways to entertain myself, some positive, some negative, and then leaning more heavily on the church during those years.
Yeah, that's a key sentence, and I want to take a break and pick that up on the other side of this break. Loneliness, it drove me deeper into the church. And I know a lot of brothers and sisters, I'm thinking of the brothers, that's where my head and my heart and my spirit are in this moment because of the conversation that the two of us are having. I know a lot of brothers can relate to that. And that the loneliness could be depression. It could be lack of being a good athlete. It could be a lot of things in the place where we're putting loneliness in this conversation. The net is that it drives people deeper, many brothers, deeper into church. And I want to pick it up right there on the other side of this break. So let's take a pause and we will be right back. We're back live with Brother Byron Jamal, talking brother to brother here. And before we went to break, Brother Byron was talking about and sharing with us how in his younger years, in his teenage years, the loneliness and depression, the isolation and the obesity and the touching by the babysitter and even some of his contemporaries, how it all served to lead him deeper into the church and what that was for him at that time. And when you were in the church, doing church work, learning church things, what is it that space, that the substance of what you got there, what did that do for you at that time in the midst of all these other unpleasant things that were happening to you in your life?
Well, the church was great at affirming my leadership skills and putting me in positions where I had to activate other and gifts and abilities. So at a young age, going into the church, being the head of the youth ministry, being the head of the youth choir, being asked to do the welcoming of the guests, so having opportunities to speak in front of people, doing things for like the Easter play or Martin Luther King Day, where I'm doing the I Have a Dream speech, or the letter from a Birmingham jail. These opportunities affirmed my significance in other spaces where I was questioning whether I was welcome or whether I was a part. I had no qualms about it at the church. When I was asked to write my first play for the church at that young age, it affirmed my writing skills that I had already discovered on my own. And then when it did well and we did a second one and put it on for the masses, it did well and again affirmed my significance. These moments were pivotal to keeping me sane, to keeping me focused on living and focused on developing and growing and trying again. These were significant to how I became more confident and self-confident in other areas where I felt my weakness was so prevalent. So the church really did help create a foundation. Now, that's the positive. The challenging part that the church introduced into my life is the development of masks. And I saw this more in hindsight, but there was great conflict between myself and my ability to see my true self lived out on the world stage. The church taught me how to master living a masked life, the image of perfection. And so oftentimes, even more recently, I've had to see myself fight against trying to give off the illusion of perfection in my life. I've tried to be more transparent in my life because pastors encouraged me to mask my sexuality. They knew that I was basically bisexual. I love women and men equally. They knew that, and many of them were having the same struggle and living the same life, married yet still like men. So they were masking their own life, and they were teaching that not just to me, but to others around me. Honestly, there were married men in the building who had a proclivity towards men as well, and so I learned to mask sexuality. I learned to hide mistakes and flaws. There were people that were gamblers. There were people that were alcoholics. There were people that were addicted to drugs. And it was a lot of masking that. And so as long as you put on the right scent to mask the aroma that you just had from the alcohol or the drugs, as long as you put on a good outfit and you looked good, your flaws were masked under an ocean of charity and good deeds. And so people were doing great stuff to mask it, and it taught me how to do that, to do advocacy, to do activism, to be there, to feed the homeless, to do these things. But there was really no one present, and I have to say this, no one present at the time to teach me how to live an honest life, not just a masked life, not a beautiful masked life, but a truly, transparently pure, honest life that had cracks, that had flaws, but still was seen as beautiful.
All right, now let's let the brothers and sisters, myself included, catch up, because you've laid down some pieces here. And you just said there was no one. I'm assuming that you're talking about the same church environment that affirmed you, there was no one present to teach me how to live an honest life. Now, brothers and sisters, let that sink in. There was no one in the church to teach me how to live an honest life. We'll come back to that. You also laid down a piece that I think is important to underscore here too. You said the church affirmed my leadership skills. So you got affirmation from the church. I think we can all appreciate, understand, and agree with that kind of affirmation coming at that time in our lives when we're introduced to church and the people see we have some promise and they say, hey boy, come over here. You stand up on that box and you read that piece on Sunday. All right, I'll do that. And you feel good. You stand up on that box, you read that piece and you're like, yeah, I got some skills. I can do this. In fact, I'm pretty good at this. So it can be a very affirming thing. So we want to celebrate that kind of affirmation that comes from the church. At the same time, and you began to go into this, I'm merely underscoring in different language. The church also begins to hand you a doctrine and a theology and a way of thinking and being in the world. And when you are someone who's being groped and touched in the middle of the night on a church trip in a hotel room, that doctrine can rise up in you. So my question is, in the light of this touching that you described that was happening to you, how did that touching, both from men and women, the 12-year-old babysitter, the boy who was a couple of grades older than you, how did that touching begin to inform your young ideas about your own sexual identity at that time?
I came to see that touching, and I think that's just the appropriate word, the touching. Touching, to me at the time, meant a level of intimacy because of the isolation I dealt with. So the touching then said, in some way, I care, but I may only care to a point. And so sex and sexuality became more of a thing to do than an expression of love.
Right.
To do more than an expression of love. And sex was really almost like using the restroom. It was something you did, had to do. There was an urgency in the body, a sensation that needed to be released and let go of, and you did it and you moved on.
Okay, well,
So that touch, yeah, go for it.
Let me step in and just play around with, that was a poor choice of words. Let me dig around. That's another poor choice of words. Let me explore, which is probably another poor choice of words given what we're talking about. But let me ask some additional questions, because I hear you. I was 14 and having sex too. I understand what you're saying. And even though I may have had some mixed feelings about it, and I certainly was not touched inappropriately by anybody I didn't want touching me, that was not my experience, there was still conflict in the sexual activity that I was having at that time. And part of the conflict was it felt good. Like I was starting to feel things that I had never really felt before, and it felt good. Like my body was showing me what it could produce in terms of pleasure and sensation. So was there any part of you that was captivated by and fascinated with the fact that it felt good?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sensation is sensation. And we all, hopefully, I mean, there are those people that don't enjoy sex in certain forms. But for me, that was never my experience. I enjoyed everything. And that was the conflict of my heart because, in some sense, for instance, when my cousin was touching me in my bedroom, he was over the house, aunt and uncle were over, he was there, and he was touching me in my room, the door was shut. My mom walked in, or grandmother walked in at the time, and was like, "What are y'all doing? Stop that." So associated with the sex and the positive sensation of what I was experiencing, there was actually now reprimands on top of that. So the positive was then met with a conflicting negative. So now it's shame attached to the act. And I experienced that a few more times in different scenarios, whether I was watching like pornography in my room and mom walked in or something like that. There was shame associated with sex. So now the pleasure is attached to shame. And now with the added piece of the church teaching me that the sensation I had and what I was feeling was also wrong. So now there's sensation and pleasure attached to shame, not just from a moral sense, but from a spiritual sense. And so now I'm getting it from both parents and from pastors.
So let me be very clear
spiritual leaders.
With the listeners. Let me be very clear about what I hear you saying, and you tell me if this is accurate. And I just wanted to be very clear because I want people to know exactly what we're talking about. The church was telling you, and you tell me if I'm wrong, was telling you at that time they were giving you doctrine. They were giving you theology. So the church was telling you that the touch that you were getting from the boy that was 2 years older than you was bad. And the touch that you were getting from the girl was probably inappropriate, but that's what boys and girls do. So I guess I'm getting to, at some point, did you begin to make a distinction for yourself in those feelings because of the doctrine you were being handed in light of the fact that you were going deeper and deeper into the church? Let's just get down to what it is.
Oh, absolutely. See, the interesting thing with that, while they were teaching that men and women should wait, of course, there were those instances where you discovered that there was adultery, infidelity in the church. And then on top of that, while they were teaching that anything I did with guys, or at the time boys, was inappropriate, there were men and boys that were doing those things and in positions of authority in the church. So it was extremely conflicting because on both hands you're saying good and bad for men and women, bad, but good for men and men. It's the same message but reversed. It's I can do this with women because it's God's will and way, yet at the right time and with the right person. But I can never do it with men, but I will do it with men while I work in the church, and it will be overlooked. And that's the thing. It's not that no one knew and that they were shamed. It was that they simply overlooked it and acted like it wasn't happening.
Okay, now I hear you.
More frustrating than anything.
I hear you, and you're talking about people, and I understand that because you're talking about the people in the church. What I would like us to get to is the doctrine and the word of God. And was there, because I'm assuming that you heard sermons about fire, hell, and brimstone and eternal damnation to homosexuals. And I'm sure you were read Leviticus and other places in the Bible. So I guess I would like to understand at what point in your relationship with God, aside from the people that you're talking about at the church, did you begin to form ideas that God doesn't love me, or God doesn't like me, or God made me wrong because of what I'm beginning to feel inside? That's where I want to get to, if we can get to that place.
Oh, absolutely. So I think that was definitely early on. From the first time I ever heard someone speak against homosexuals in the church. I went to a church where my particular pastor never preached openly about homosexuality. I can't remember one message where he actually said homosexuals or gays or anything like that. He was a very studious Pastor Steger, Dr. Pastor Steger. He was extremely learned and educated, And he was a lot more liberal in that sense, probably more progressive than his time would have afforded. So he just never spoke of it. But he did preach of hell, and he did preach of sins and immorality in a more loose sense.
So it began to set up a conflict for you. You had your spirituality on one side, and you had, as you grew, what was becoming your sexuality, or bisexuality in this case, on the other side. As your life progressed, how did those two worlds come together? Because the reason why we're talking about it today is because recently I was scrolling through your Facebook page and saw a video where you just were talking about, listen, I feel so much better about the fact that I'm just out about it now. I'm bisexual. That's what I am. That's what I do. That's who I am. So how did you come to that place after years of being conflicted or confused or not understanding the intersection of your sexuality and your spirituality?
Well, the first part that was a struggle is two separate issues. It's the spiritual part itself, and then it's the critique that I am sure many of my transgendered and transsexual brothers and sisters encounter. It is the judgment from the gay community as well. So I'm going to start with the spiritual. On the spiritual side, I had to embrace the fact that God was a loving God. That's right. The only way I could move forward was that God is love, and that love overrides everything. And that I knew of Jesus, I knew of Muhammad, I knew of all the leaders. I went to theology school, I studied all the religions. I said, okay, I see God, but God is more love than God is anything else. And whatever God made, God knew, God made it first and then put me in it. And I always go back to this. When we look at every creation story, God creates the world and everything in it and then places mankind inside of the world. Mm-hmm. That tells me that God set it for us to be in it and knew who we were for the world mm-hmm. and to each other. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, that love is all around us. Everything created was created in love and for us to love, because it was created by the one we love and the one that loves us. Now, coming to the understanding of what you just said, getting to where you just said right there, everything you just said, that was learned outside of the church through personal study or through communion with the Holy Spirit. How did you get to just the understanding that you just articulated? I had to separate from the church while maintaining. I basically had one foot in and out of the church. Mm-hmm. I actually got to that place in seminary. So I was visiting churches as a seminarian in a different city, but I wasn't actively engaged in a church to where I was like deeply in leadership and all of those things. So, but I was studying religions, and I was studying the old church, and I was studying the ancient philosophies, and I was studying how they formed the actual church itself, and all the things that I thought were in the Bible, I learned were created by a man who was a king, and then Constantine, I'm speaking of, mm-hmm. and a lot of these things that I thought were dogmas in the church were actually created by a man who was killing other people. So I'm like, okay, all right. I need to really think about how hard I'm holding on to these traditions, because there's a difference between the tradition of the church and the actual philosophies and ideologies of God. So you begin to develop some ideas like, wait a minute, God loves me just as I am. In fact, he made me on purpose, with purpose, intentionally, consciously, and I'm all good. You came to that place at some point in your life. Yes, exactly. And honestly, it does take a separation. If you are deeply entrenched in a very ideological church that preaches very harshly against things and stands on more principle, especially if it's teachings of the denomination more than it is the Bible, I experienced that. I had some, about what women wear at church and how men should do their hair and all these different things that were more of the faith tradition of that denomination than anything ever found in the Bible.
Right.
So I had to come to grips with that too. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that because I have long hair, it's locked up, that means suddenly I am going to hell? Like, this is where a lot of these traditions go. They take you deeper and deeper into their own thoughts, and whatever that is, whatever their definition of holiness is, it takes you deeper and deeper into their tradition, and I believe it honestly takes you further and further away from God, because it's hard to marry a man's thought with God's belief and God's knowledge and God's understanding of what he or she feels towards us. It's hard to marry those two. It is hard, and when the church attempts to put its own feelings and thoughts and opinions on God, that's when we run into trouble. If we kept church basic and we said God loves you, live your best life as you can. We understand perfection is the goal, but it is often not how we're able to live on a day-to-day basis. There is not a day. It almost tells us there's hardly a day where you can go without committing some offense if you were to go off the Old Testament to God. So you have to then believe. And this is the final thing that helped me, the final thought that got me over that line, if you will, the finish line to where I am now. If sin is sin, and sin is unweighted, then any sin, whether we consider it big or small, any sin can send you to hell. If you're a consistent liar, if you are a consistent gossiper, as many church people are, if you are a consistent hypocrite, as many church people are, then you cannot come to me and tell me I'm going to hell, but you're not. Because your sin is lighter, quote unquote, than mine. And that is the thought that took me over the line that said, you know what? I will be as free as God made me to be, and whatever this is that God gave me, whatever sensation, feeling, urging, the urge to love across all lines, whatever this is, love is not hate, and love can never be judged negatively. So as long as I am doing the right thing by people and loving, then I will keep loving, while those gossiping church people, those hypocritical church people, they're spreading hatred. So I am not going to honor hate when hate can never be love.
So let's.
So I will step back and keep loving how I know I need to love.
Amen, brother. Now you mentioned the word love a lot, and I want to dig around in that place in a few minutes that we have left. And one of the pieces that I read during the commercial break by James Baldwin, he was talking about the distinction between love and sexuality, and I really want to be clear on this for a lot of the brothers and sisters out there, because I hear you say, and I know what you mean when you say it, like I'm going to love who I love and all that. There's a distinction between who you love, brother, and who you having sex with. I ain't talking about you personally. I'm just saying in general. So one of the things that I think we have to come to, straight, gay, transsexual, bi, whatever the alphabet is of how you self-identify. It's not just about the fact that you're gay or straight or somewhere in between. One of the principles in the Bible that I think gets overlooked sometimes in the light of this discussion is fornication. Just because you gay don't mean you got to be a fornicator. And just because you straight don't mean you got to be a fornicator. And just because you bi don't mean you got to be a fornicator. And a fornicator is anybody who lays down with and has sex with somebody that they're not married or committed to.
Sex. For me, obesity helped me to push people away sexually, but I think in their isolation, loneliness, and sense of not knowing themselves, sex is also used as an affirmative. So it's used, people like my body, people want this part of me, and they're willing to embrace that people just want a piece of them and embrace it as a whole. And that is what that is. And I know that crosses all lines and spectrums, where it really don't have to talk about a particular sexuality or sexual preference. It is simply people having sex. There are, people who will do that. They may not consider themselves bisexual, but they, just in the interest of wanting to be embraced, they will do stuff with their wives and do group sex with in groups with other married couples. So there's so many ways that can go. I think for me, and just saying this piece as a conclusionary thought, from the church, even in the community itself, in the whole LGBT community, the B is often very, and we can talk about this in more detail later on, but the B is very, just like the T, is considered something that almost is shunned in the community. I mean, I think even more so now, as more transgenders are getting embraced in the community, I think they're still getting embraced even at a faster level than any of the bisexuals are. And that was the hesitation, because gay people don't believe that men can be bisexual. They want every man to just be gay. And if you're bisexual, then you're just still acting to say, oh, you want a preference with a woman. And then straight people believe that you're just fulfilling lust. So that was another piece.
Let's talk
really
about that.
Hindered me from.
We're out of time, but let's just ride this out to the fourth base and slide home and get out of here. All right. So just this week,
there you go.
Quincy Jones. An interview was released with Quincy Jones on Vulture.com. I'm sure some of you out there have heard this. And he said in the interview, he was talking about a lot of things, but he brought up Marlon Brando, the late actor Marlon Brando, and how great of a dancer he was, and how he used to go with them to do the cha-cha in certain places, and how, in Quincy's word, that anything. And he said, Richard Pryor, James Baldwin, Marvin Gaye, that. So he dropped these names about people that Marlon Brando had, in his words. And the next day, Richard Pryor's wife confirmed it. Yeah, they were having sex for years. It's not a secret. Richard used to sit at home and laugh about it, thinking, what if people found out Brando and I were, Richard himself on some of his old albums would talk about, and stuff. So he kind of was telling you why he's alive. I don't think Marvin Gaye's family is too happy about that. I'm sure James Baldwin was open with his sexuality, so he was telling you when he was alive. So some people told you what they were about and others didn't. And Quincy dropping all this information after their deaths. I don't know how I feel about that. But the point is that the brother, Richard Pryor, was obviously bisexual. To your point, in the gay culture, with a lot of gay, particularly black gay brothers and sisters, as Byron said, do not believe that bisexuality is a thing, particularly when it comes to black men. They think that bisexuality is a stop on the road to gay town. So there are a lot of brothers and sisters out there who are going to want to make you gay, just like them, if you're bisexual. So it goes back to what Baldwin was saying. Any label that you encounter, it has the power for others to define you by it, but it doesn't have the power for you to define yourself by that label. That's your choice. It's up to you how you self-identify. Yep. So I hear you when you say there are going to be people who don't buy it, that you're bisexual. Who cares? What I'm most interested in talking to you about is why you decided to declare that publicly, and what has your life and the condition of your heart been since you sort of, quote unquote, came out about that?
Since I've come out, it was funny because people just wanted me to come out as gay. I was like, no, I actually still have an affinity to women as well. So it was an embrace, but not a full embrace. So gay guys often will, hang out with me, but they don't know how to handle me. There's a reservation because they're like, oh, maybe he'll go with a woman at the end of all this, So there's a reservation and a hesitation. And women, of course, they want to be more friends than anything else. Maybe occasionally try to get me to have sex or something like that, but not really a commitment. So it kind of puts you in this box to where you almost have to find somebody else that understands bisexuality in order to date.
Right.
Because they understand that you can be gay or straight and still be a hoe.
Right. That's my point.
Like one or the other.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you like both, it doesn't mean that you're more of a hoe or that you'll switch back and forth. It just means when you choose, you'll choose, but you have options.
Exactly.
And but a lot of people can't embrace that. So that's the struggle. And that's, since being out, though, honestly, more people have embraced me. They, as I mentioned more about the mask, that mask has come down and come out, and I'm more myself. I'm able to be a lot more free, and I really have reached the point where I don't care as much about what people think of me and how I live and what I'm going through, and I'm able to share a lot more.
Okay, now, brother, now you've laid down, we're out of time, as I said, and I want to respect your time, and you laid down some homework, and I would like to, you and I have been talking about working together in this space in the near future, and I would like to put this, I don't quite know what you're thinking about what that's going to be. I'm leaving that to you. So this could be in addition to that, or in lieu of that. It's, you know, I'm going to let you, as the younger brother, drive that. All right. But you did lay down a piece here today that I would like to follow up with you on early on. And I didn't follow up on it on purpose because I knew where I was trying to get to. But you said the church taught me how to fight against, you said sometimes I have to work on fighting against giving off the illusion of perfection. And that's what you learned in church because of the masks that they handed you. And I do want to follow up with you on that, because that right there is wrecking a lot of brothers and sisters' lives, giving off the illusion that there is perfection in their lives. Some of us work really hard on that. I spent a lot of money on Italian suits and shoes to give off the perception that there was perfection in my life. There may have been perfection in my wardrobe, but there has never been perfection in my life in the 51 years that I've been on this earth. So I do want to follow up on that piece with you another time. Let's see, what else did you say here that I thought was really, really, really noteworthy that we didn't get a chance to speak on? While I'm looking for that, you tell me what your final thoughts are. Anything that you did not get a chance here to say today that you would like to speak on right now?
Well, I'm always glad to be able to share with you, and I appreciate you having me on today to even tell this part of my story. I know, and I've been thinking of this often as I'm kind of going through this transition of being more myself. And unmasking, I came to this realization that an actor can really only introduce a character but cannot become one. And not knowing who you are, you simply play a very convenient role, but you have to eventually get off the stage and live your true life. And the best life that you can ever live is when you're aligned with your truth. You can't introduce anyone to yourself if you don't know who you are. And I have gotten to a place where I am more convicted about knowing myself and taking the time to get to know myself, to really be able to say, this is who I am to the world. And that's my charge to people all over this world. I said recently that we have a generation of people more focused on their ability to define their bodies than really being able to define who they are. And you can't improve anything about yourself until you know yourself. So I am in this space now where I am encouraging people to stop trying to be so physically focused. Yes, have a healthy body, but make it a part of the wholeness of your life. Make it a part of the full effort of your life to know more about yourself, to know more about what you love, what you dislike, what you need, what is sticking you, what is your pain. God told Paul, Paul basically said, I have this thorn, and God didn't say, I was going to get rid of it for you, Paul. He said, I'm giving you grace to cover it. There's a part of your life that's sticking you. Maybe you need to know that. Maybe you need to know that that's not something you need to try to pull out. It's something you need to learn to try to live with and find why it's empowering or why it's creating a limitation in your life so that you don't hurt yourself.
Right.
Right. In that self-discovery, that can only happen in isolation. And taking that time to appreciate isolation, which can sometimes feel like loneliness, but it's really isolation that brings reflection, to bring healing, and to bring self-awareness and self-actualization. So I applaud people who now are willing to say, I need to stay home and really, be with myself and don't want to be out all the time. So that's my final thought, is really getting to a place where you can unmask your life and live with more transparency. And in that, people can find you more. They can find you. They can connect to you. And if that's what you're looking for, is healthy relationships, it only happens when you know who you are. So please, please, please take that time and unmask your life. However that mask has to come off, do it, because it will transform your life.
So my final thought on what we've talked about here today is, first of all, thank you for coming and sharing and being open and clear. I love the clarity of your story and of your telling of your story. I love the clarity. Clarity comes from the Holy Spirit. Clarity is not something that we piece together in our own human imagination. Clarity is a gift from God about who you are in God. All right?
Yes.
That's a gift, and you have that. You've been given that gift. Now it's up to you and to me, that now that we've been given the gift of clarity, to go out and fashion a life. What does the word say that I love so much? There's a scripture that says, produce fruit in keeping with repentance. Produce fruit in keeping with repentance. So now that you're clear, and now that I'm clear, go out into the world and produce fruit in keeping with your clarity. Because that's how I'm going to know that you mine. Yeah. All right? Come on now. Let's rock the people out of here today. That's how you know that you mine. When you go out into the world and you produce fruit and people say, damn, look at that oak. Look at that mighty oak of God right there. And I ain't even said nothing. I just walked on by and they go, look at that oak. That's how you know. It ain't about what we can just say to each other in intimate conversation like this, although that is important. Very important step. It's how are we going to live? Who are we going to be? And what fruit are we going to produce in keeping with the clarity that God has bestowed upon us, which is a gift. Yeah. Because with that clarity, Brother Byron, with that clarity, Brother Robert, I'm saying this to myself, with that clarity, and we know this, to whom much is given, much is required. God didn't give us this clarity for us to put our thumbs up our ass for the rest of our life. No, there's a responsibility. We got work to do. We got work to do. There's some brothers out there who needed to hear everything you said here today, who were hanging on the precipice, who weren't sure which way to go with that, and heard you. And now they can go on at least another 24 hours while they figure some more things out. So we have a responsibility. Let me ask you this. Is Sister Brenda, Miss Brenda Leach, is that your mama?
Yes.
Because she reached out here and said, tell Robert I have adopted him as well. Well, I got a great mama and I will take you too. So I receive. You can never have too much mother love. I got a great mother and now I got two. So I receive, Miss Brenda. I appreciate you. All right, Brother Byron, thank you for blessing me today with your presence. Thank you for blessing our listeners with your story. And I'm going to wait to hear from you about where we go together next. No pressure.
I like the unmasking. So let's talk more about it.
Yeah. There's a lot of masks. And I love that you put it that way, because that church did hand you a mask. That's what churches do. They don't mean to hurt you. No church is trying to hurt you.
Right.
None of those pastors are standing up. They're not going to stand up tomorrow and say, how many people can I hurt today? They really believe that they're saving your soul in the things that they do and the things that they preach. They really do believe that. So what you want to look for, brothers and sisters, is enlightenment behind the pulpit. And if your consciousness supersedes that of your pastor to the degree where you're no longer being fed by the shepherd of your flock, then you got some decisions to make about where you go and how you receive your soul food. You really do.
That's the truth.
It's the truth.
That was the truth.
Come on now. It's the truth. I want to surround myself in my personal life, in my professional life, and in my spiritual life with giants who are way more learned than I am, whose consciousness is way bigger than I am, because they always pulling me up.
That's it.
And yeah, we do need to spend some time with the least of these, and I don't mean that in a hierarchical sense, but we need to spend time with those who will benefit from the gifts that we have to give. I certainly understand that, but I'm talking about in my wise counsel, I want the people who are way further down the road than I am.
Yes.
All right, brother.
Further, that's why I have this. I learned to take from his wisdom and to really have to challenge him and push him to push me.
Exactly. It goes back to what you said. Help yourself to find yourself. And one of the ways you help yourself to find yourself is to surround yourself with wise men and wise women. Surround yourself with them. And the gift that God gave you, Brother Byron, and gave me, and you said it earlier, was that even in your childhood, this is how good God is, I'm about to shout. Even in your childhood, it may not have been what you would have chosen, but God surrounded you with older people. You said it. You said, I didn't get a chance to talk to or build relationships with people my age. I was always surrounded with older people. It may have felt like a curse at the time. But you always talk about the call path and how there are indicators along your path that show you who you're becoming. And that was one of them. By setting you in a family with older people, it was showing you that you are going to be a sage, that you're going to be a wise counsel to many. So I need to incubate you in an older energy with people who have been here much longer than you, so you can begin to absorb what they have to offer. That's a gift. That's a gift.
Yes, it is. It is. I feel that.
That's a gift. Now that we're older, brothers, and I'm much older than you are. Now that we're older, we can go back into our childhood experience and not look at it from the eyes of that child, but from the eyes of the grown ass men that we are today. I'm a grown ass man. I don't need to look back, right. Okay? I don't need to look back when I was 13 and interpret that experience through the eyes of a 13-year-old. I interpret that experience now through the eyes of a 51-year-old and see it for what it is and what it was. And that's also hanging a lot of us up. We're stuck back at some of those points. Those wounds are still unhealed. I love you. I'm going to end the way I started. I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I honor you. And I thank you for your time here today, my brother, Byron Jamal.
It is my pleasure, brother. And I love you too. Thank you. We will be talking very soon.
All right. Thank you, brother. I'll see you next time.
Be well now.
All right. We wear the mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet, and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. Paul Laurence Dunbar.
So that's my final thought, is really getting to a place where you can unmask your life and live with more transparency. And in that, people can find you more. They can find you. They can connect to you. And if that's what you're looking for, is healthy relationships, it only happens when you know who you are. So please, please, please take that time and unmask your life. However that mask has to come off, do it because it will transform your life.
Now, you've just given me, and the Holy Spirit just gave me while you were talking, what I would like to do with you next in terms of the work that we were talking about, a series called We Wear the Mask. We Wear the Mask is my favorite poem ever, of any poem that was ever written. That's my favorite poem by Paul Lawrence Dunbar. I'm not going to read it now. I'm going to resist the urge to speak it out now, but it's called We Wear the Mask. And I would like us to do some work in this space where we bring on brothers who do exactly what you just did. You know, you came clean and came clear and came complete about who you are in this world, whatever that is. You know, I'm a closet foodie, whatever it is. We're talking about sexuality, but it doesn't have to be that. I would like it to connect to a mask that you were handed in church, though, because I do think that's key. We're black folks. Let me just be clear. And most black folks get their programming from church. Let's just be clear, brothers and sisters. That's where we get it from. There's a lot of good. Brother Byron spoke about a lot of the good, affirming things in the church experience. There's a lot of bad in the church experience too. And we need to clean that out and become healthier and more whole spiritual people. That is our true spiritual identity. As much as I respect and love everything my brother has said here today, and this may not be true for you, Byron, I'm just speaking from my own experience and from the waters that God has me swimming in. I love what you did here today. I love that you're clear about who you are. And yet at the same time, I know that when we look at our spiritual identity as God looks at our spiritual identity, it has very little to do with our sexuality and who we may be engaging in on that level. That's a piece of it, and it's an important piece. I'm not minimizing it at all. I'm talking about your spiritual identity that God gave you.
Yeah.
All right. It's so much bigger than this human conversation that we're having right now, although this is important. So we got some work to do. You and I could go on and on and on and on for the rest of the afternoon, but I just want to once again offer you this space. This is a space where you can come to and we can work on some of these things together, or I'm even open to you if you want to just come on and just do some straight up teaching. We've done this many times where brothers and sisters come on and I'll go sit in the back of the classroom and you can just teach on whatever you want to teach on. And then we'll throw around some questions and answers at the end and build that way. So however you want to do it, I'm here for that. And I want you to know that. So let me start by asking you today, for real, what is it that what's your intention for our conversation today? What do you want to get out of our talk today?
Damn it, you always come with these light thinking questions right now.
We can come back to that.
Okay, let's go back to that.
We can come back to that. We can
wait. No. What do I want? What are my intentions?
Yeah. Why did you say yes when I asked you to have this conversation?
I enjoy what you pull out and what I'm able to grasp from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
When I listen to you, when I talk to you, and my intent is to grow and to be empowered in whatever this moment that is being created is for. I want the best for it. I want the best for the both of us, however it is. You know, that makes sense. Does that make sense to you, or was I kind of like off? No, I wasn't off. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I asking you? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want.
Well, I received that. I
want that. I want the best.
And preparing for today, I went back and listened to our first interview together, which was called...
Very first one?
Yep, No More Masks. So, do you remember that conversation that we had on September 10th, 2011?
Yep.
Okay.
I sure do. I sure do. One of the questions that you asked was, why me? What made you come to me? That's what it was. I think that's what it was.
That's exactly what it was. That's where I'm going now, because when you talk, when I hear your intention for today's conversation, it takes me right back to that question, because that's how we met. I did not know you, and you sent me the links for this No More Masks video on YouTube.
Right.
So
you recently sent me a link to a YouTube video, and I watched the video and I was quite taken with what I saw. What made you send me that link?
I believe that you have a voice. The Robert Branch, you have a voice. Robert Wesley, you have a voice. And I just wanted that to reach the masses as best way as it could, because I wanted it out there. I did not want for people to know that they were alone, you know, whether listening or just by anyone that you may have known, you know, in passing that could use that video. You know, I wanted it to be an instrument to be heard, you know, in the lives of everyone, not just those that are in church, but those that are outside of church as well, because it is a movement. It is a fight every day in someone's life, you know. That's why I wanted to pass it on to you. I just said, okay, he has a voice. I feel like I can connect and, you know, get this word out there, because it's out of me already. So I just want as many people that are around that can hear this message.
My first impression was, I wonder what it took for you to get to that day, like getting to that day where you actually delivered that message in that church.
I remember sitting in this church on one Sunday, and I said, I can't do this no more. I said, I can't do this. I said, this isn't me. And I was sitting in there, and I felt like I blanked out. And I left. I told my mom, I said, Mom, let's go. And it was a church. I was looking for a church in Long Beach that was saying gender loving, because I said, I have to live out this truth now, because I can't do this no longer. And I know it was a few weeks prior to that, I was on my way to committing suicide. That, you know, before that I had that turnaround, that breaking point, and I was sitting in church. I said, I can't do this.
So when you're sitting in church and you're saying to yourself, I can't do it, was it because of a message that you heard the preacher given, or what was happening around you at that moment that led you to say, this is my line in the sand?
That was during the time that there was a lot of teens committing suicide. Because they were being bullied, because they were being, you know, tormented for who they were, and they were killing themselves. And I said, I remember that place. I remember being there. You know, I wasn't being bullied, but I was being a victim to myself. You know, I was being my own victim. I was being my own bully, because no one was making me stay there but me. And I was sitting there, I said, I have to leave this place. And that moment, my moment of truth, when I was sitting in that service at my old church, and said, I can't do this. I have to find me a place that I can worship freely and be me, you know, whoever I am, you know, whoever Andrew is, you know, because it takes time to really find out who you are after you come out. You know,
well, how did you know that you couldn't be yourself in that church, though, is what I'm trying to understand.
Okay. I had known that because the pastor's wife told me. She said, you can be gay. She said, because I expressed who I was to the pastor and his wife before we started ministry together, so that nothing would come out. You know,
okay.
And I said, you know,
no
this surprise. Is who I am. Yeah, no, right. You know, and I wanted them to be, you know, I said, this is who I am. I said, I'm not out, but I said, because, you know, I feel that we're going to be in covenant together. I want you to know that I don't want to lie to you on any basis whatsoever. They were cool, but they said, we're still going to preach the gospel regardless. You know, we love who you are, but we're still going to preach, you know, about homosexuality and what the Bible has to say about it. And little did I know, I was like, well, you do you. You know, go ahead, do you. You know, because it's not going to fit me, because I've been living like this all my life, and I'm going to continue to live, you know, a closet lifestyle, and still go to church and be, you know, the praise and worship leader, the exhortation leader. I'm going to do all that. And it was okay. It was okay for me then. It was okay when I said that back then because I knew that they weren't going to tell anybody, and I definitely wasn't going to tell anybody
right.
about, who I was. I wasn't going to do that. That was going to be our little secret, and we was going to have church together. And that was it.
Did you think at that time that people knew, but it was an unspoken sort of knowledge? Or did you think nobody really knew that you were gay, that you are gay?
I think some people knew because, people would ask. They would ask, well, I heard you were, and I would deny it. You're hearing a lot. That's not who I am. And I'll put on this side, nah. So I would date, bring different types of women to church and, let them, I would try and fool them. Oh, well, he has these types of women that he's bringing to church, that well, maybe he's not, and I had some of the closest people, they wouldn't ask me, but they would have their little conversations about me, and their little conversations would come out to other people, So I believe that everyone that who went to the church with me, they probably had some idea because I was really bold, and there were some ways about me that, hey, either he is or he isn't.
Right.
There's no hiding there.
And so you were sitting in church one day and said to yourself, I can't do this anymore. And then what happened next?
I left service.
So the link that you sent me was to a series of videos called No More Masks. No More Masks. Yeah. And when you went to this new church, at what point did this message begin to stir in you? No more masks. How did that come about?
The pastor knew. I told her, I had done preaching. I'm a pastor. She says, okay, I'm going to give you a Sunday. A Sunday to preach. I'm like, already? And from that moment, I
just got here.
Like so soon. Like I need to let me breathe a minute. Let me breathe.
Let me just say, Andrew, now ain't that God and the universe saying to you, okay, you said this is what you wanted, so now here you go.
Right. But at the time, I'm thinking, okay, I didn't know it was going to be this soon. I'm thinking, okay, let me get to know me for a minute first, And I did not know what I was going to preach. I did not know. And I could not, for the life of me, take notes of anything. But in that moment, I was laying down in bed and I heard, I heard the voice. I heard my inner being just like say, tell your story. I'm like, huh? Tell your story. You don't have to preach. Tell your story. And I said, that makes sense. But I said, but what if? I said, but there's going to be a lot of people there that don't know me. Tell your story. So when I heard that, I called up everybody else, all of my friends, all of the ones that went to the Baptist churches with me, that supported me in ministry, that invited me to their churches to preach. I invited all of them to come. And sure enough, all of them came. Okay, I was nervous because I said, okay, like Paulie called me, this is it. No turning around. This is it. Don't get scared now.
Don't walk me too quickly to the altar now, because I like to pick stuff apart. All right, don't walk me too.
Okay, bro.
All right. So when God said, let's just take a quick sidebar though, just before we continue on that story, because to your point about the timing, one of the most difficult and beneficial lessons for me to learn, spiritual wisdom for me to grasp and understand in my life, is that God's timing is different from my timing. It's just different. It's just different.
Yes.
I can have it in my mind what I want to happen and how I want it to happen, but God's timing is different. What is that scripture? I think it might be in Isaiah where it says, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways.
It's just the truth.
You're right. It is in Isaiah. Don't quote me on where it is.
Yeah, it's Isaiah, somewhere in there. And that's the absolute truth. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So God's timetable is always perfect. It's always exactly what we need at that time, but we don't know that until after we've gone through that moment.
Right. You better preach. You better preach.
I'm just saying. So God said, do you tell your story? Your inner voice one day at your home or wherever you were in the park or wherever said, tell your story. And when did the title, No More Masks, come?
No More Masks. The title came to me the night before. I have props here in my home because I don't have storage, and I use a lot of props for plays and things. Mm-hmm. And I was in there, and I looked at the mask that I had, and I said, whoa. And I sat down and I cried because I looked at it and I said, this is you. Mm-hmm. This is you. In that moment, I looked at all the other masks and said, Drew, no more masks. This is it.
The night before.
Tomorrow you're going to be telling the night before.
Wow.
The night before. You're going to be telling your story. And I looked at all the masks and I said, no more masks, Drew.
The word the night before that this is not only going to be a testimony, this is going to be a message that I'm giving you to deliver to the people, and that message is no more masks. And you were using masks that as a playwright you had already used prior in many of your plays, various people portraying you wearing these masks.
Yes.
Let me say one more thing before we go on, because you don't really know me that well. We're just getting to know one another. And my favorite poem in the whole world is by a man named Paul Laurence Dunbar. And he wrote a poem called We Wear the Mask. Have you ever heard that poem?
No, I haven't.
We Wear the Mask. I'm going to read it for you real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I love this poem. It's called, and it's relevant to what we're talking about. We wear the mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, O great Christ, our cries to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but, oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet, and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. Paul Laurence Dunbar. My favorite poem ever. So even more poignant when I got this link from you and the video was No More Masks, and I was like, wow, and then I began to get in it and in there with you in the storytelling, and I was like, okay, this brother is telling his story. So you wake up that Sunday morning with this message in your heart, no more masks, and you go to church and you stand up there and you begin to deliver this message. The thing that struck me most was how, so now I know because you've given me the backstory, but when I watched the link, I didn't know this. The environment was so supportive. I mean, there appeared to be women in there, older women who were just, go on, son, preach it, son, tell the truth, tell the truth. And I was like, wow, that is a very supportive environment that he is in, because I know if you had delivered that message in the church that I grew up in here in Washington, D.C., which was a Baptist church, very traditional, hymn singing Baptist folks who didn't even shout, who if you shouted, they would look at you like, okay, somebody help that sister, somebody help that brother. This was a very conservative Baptist church. If you had stood up and given that message, I mean, there wouldn't have been a sound in there. No encouragement.
I believe you.
So you had a very supportive environment in which to unpack that message. So now walk us through book, chapter, and verse. At what point, from the time that you got there, how long did it take for you to actually speak? Was there a lot of service that happened before you stood up to give that message? How much time went by while you're sitting there? And what were you thinking during that time?
It seemed on that day, service went by quick. Well, it felt like they did praise and worship, and after praise and worship, I was right up there to speak. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was sitting in service for 20 minutes before I spoke. And that right there, I said, okay, And the mask that was, I did not rehearse anything, so I did not know what mask I was going to pull out and I was going to place on each other. I just knew I had mask in the bag that
And
was
handcuffs.
representing the stick. And handcuffs. And handcuffs.
Handcuffs. I was like, Lord, what is he going to do with these handcuffs?
I had the mask in the bag, and the mask in the bag was just, they were coming out in a way that I said, okay, this is being, now that when I watched the video, I said, that was orchestrated by God. That had to be, you know, because I didn't know where I was going. I was just like, walk with me, Holy Ghost. Just